President Moreno seconds. Thomas seconds officially. All in favor? 6 yeas, motion carries. Thank you.
We're now on top of page 35. Zoning docket 7222 has been deferred to November the 3rd. On page 36, all matters, zoning docket 7322 has been deferred to November the 3rd. Ordinance calendar number 33,183 has been deferred to January 5th. On top of page 37, ordinance calendar number 33,866 has been deferred to November the 3rd. We have ordinance calendar number 33,872 by Councilmember Thomas by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana to allow and facilitate the planning and construction of the redevelopment of Lincoln Beach as more fully set forth in a cooperative endeavor agreement form attached hereto as Exhibit A and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
This is a cooperative endeavor agreement. I see we have one speaker, Mr. Abraham McNeil.
Thank you all, council. Thank you, Councilman Thomas, for acting so with urgency, handling the matters for New Orleans for Lincoln Beach. Abraham McNeil, I am the economic liaison for the Lincoln Beach corridor and representative for New Orleans for Lincoln Beach. Our president, Trisha Wallace, is sick today, so she could not be here. And so she confirmed to, while we are for the postponement of the agreement, we wish that the date would be moved to November 20th. So to give us at least 30 days within that time frame and allow us to still kind of move forward within before the last quarterly fiscal period of the year for the city.
Well, okay. Well, I talked to Liz, and we're going to move forward with this motion instrument today, and then we'll work on the other piece.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And there was some confusion around cooperative endeavor agreements. And for folk who may not know, this is an instrument. It's an agreement that is legally binding contract between two parties that outlines the rights and obligations of each party. CEAs are usually formed to manage shared resources or provide mutual support within an industry. These types of agreements are important and commonly used to protect both parties and can be a profound way of co-creating trust and safety while working through any conflicts on a particular project. So, we had delayed this early on. I had actually never seen anybody turn down money before, but there was some confusion about why. I think we've cleared that up. With that, I move adoption of 33,872.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all your work. Seconded by Councilmember.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Green. Vote your machines with Councilmember Green. Second by Councilmember King, officially. All in favor? Ayes have it, so ordered. 6 yeas, no nays. The ordinance is adopted.
We're now on top of page 38, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,885 has been deferred to November 3rd. Ordinance calendar number 33,886 has been deferred to November 3rd. On top of page 39, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,893 has been deferred to 11/3. Ordinance calendar number 33,897 has been deferred to 11/3. On top of page 40, all matters. No. Ordinance calendar number 33,898 has been deferred to November the 3rd. We have ordinance calendar number 33,899 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28,863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to reduce the 2022 general fund appropriation to the Department of Police and increase the appropriation to the Department of Sanitation in order to fund additional sanitation expenses in 2022, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The fiscal note was received, the Budget Committee. Oh, that's it.
I was going to say, Madam Clerk, I apologize because we're going to defer this matter, and
Oh.
I thought we had told you. So
Okay.
thank you for reading, but deferred.
Okay. And the ordinance at the bottom of the page, 33,900 has been deferred to 11/3. On top of page 41, ordinance calendar number 33,901 has been deferred to 11/3. At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,904 by council members Harris, Moreno, Morel, Jeruso, King, Green, and Thomas. An ordinance to require the Department of City Civil Service in accordance with section 4-1503 of the Home Rule Charter to evaluate and provide recommendations to the Civil Service Commission and the City Council relative to amending the classified pay plan to increase to market rate the minimum annual salary of all fire classes coded to the department, to the fire department, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This ordinance will direct civil service to evaluate current salaries at all levels of the NOFD. These first responders are some of the lowest paid city employees we have, and it's time for that to change. With crime on everyone's mind, we have focused a lot of our efforts on the NOPD, but some firefighters are making a base of less than $15 an hour, and neighboring parishes provide better compensation to their firefighters at all levels. NOFD plays an important role, not just when it comes to fires, but they are sometimes the first to respond to situations in need of NOPD or EMS services. So I'm thanking all of my colleagues who have signed on as co-authors. Are there any public comments? Any comments from the dais? All right, so I'll move. Seconded by Council President Moreno. All in favor? 5 yeas, motion passes. Thank you.
It's now 6, council member. On top of page 42, we have ordinance calendar number 33,905 by council member Thomas by request. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans, the Industrial Development Board of the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, Inc., for a term greater than 1 year for the public purpose of the redevelopment of the former Six Flags property in the city of New Orleans as more fully detailed in a cooperative endeavor agreement form attached here to as Exhibit A, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
The current CEA with the IDB has run out. This extends it during the negotiation for Six Flags. Move adoption. Second by Councilmember Harris, all in favor. 6 yeas, no nays, and it passes. Thank you.
We have ordinance calendar number 33,906 has been deferred to November the 3rd. Ordinance calendar number 33,907 has been deferred to November the 3rd. On top of page 43, ordinance calendar number 33,908 has been deferred to November the 3rd. Ordinance calendar number 33,909 by council members King, Green, and Harris by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into the First Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and Metropolitan Human Services District relative to collaborate and engage in referral relationships with community organizations that provide case management services as required in Section 330 of Public Health Service Act Healthcare for the Homeless Program, to modify the provisions thereof and extend the term of thereof for 2 years as more fully set forth in the First Amendment form attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made a part hereof, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I move adoption. Second by Councilmember Harris. 6, 5 yeas, no nays. Motion is adopted. Thank you.
Council members, we need to go back to page 42 and reconsider the vote on number 26 because we have a comment.
Move to reconsider. Aye. Thank you. Motion to reconsider adopt passes. Public comment, please.
We have a comment from Joshua Johnston. He says, giving the mayor and council authority to negotiate an agreement around Six Flags is a bad idea, given the way they've misused public property with no accountability. City property management has Lafayette Cemetery #1, one of the largest destinations for visitors to the city for 3 years, and council has refused to provide any oversight of this administration's management of the process. Given this demonstrable record of bad faith with city officials admitting the plan was drafted just for certain interests, which officials worked for privately before taking office, it's inappropriate to allow them to enter into new agreements without real oversight mechanisms. As such, we cannot trust the administration or its compliant city council to oversee these types of agreements or be in charge of them. They have demonstrated bad faith where they can get away with it. Council has demonstrated a clear pattern of carrying water for the administration across the board, except where a few headlines are concerned. The public has no mechanism of being heard once the city is given new authority to draft these types of plans. We've seen this firsthand across the board by your offices. If the city is so badly unable to manage its current projects, it should not be increasing its workload irresponsibly. You may claim to respond on these issues here at this meeting. You all know privately you are unresponsive on such issues regularly, which leaves the public locked out of the process. And that's fine with all of your offices, but not with the people of New Orleans.
Yeah, I think it's quite profound now that I read what cooperative endeavor agreements are. This extends the cooperative endeavor agreement between IDB and NORA for the purposes of Six Flags. It doesn't add more oversight or insight from the city council and the mayor. With that, move adoption again. Move. Second by Councilmember Marino. Vote your machines. Seconded by Councilmember Harris for official records. All in favor? 6 yeas, no nays, and it's adopted again. 7 yeas, no nays.
We're now on top of page 44. We have ordinance calendar number 33,910 by council members Green, Harris, and King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into the First Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement by and between the city of New Orleans and Dillard University. The city and Dillard desire to accomplish a valuable public purpose of providing support and services to vulnerable citizens while providing a robust clinical experience for students in the healthcare field, to modify the provisions thereof and extend the term thereof for 2 years as more fully set forth in the First Amendment form attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made a part hereof, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Fellow members of the council, this ordinance will allow the city to extend the term of an existing, it's important to recognize existing CEO between the city and Dillard University for 2 years. Through the CEO, Dillard students in various healthcare fields gain clinical experience by providing support services to the city's health clinics. The city and Dillard University desire to accomplish a valuable public service, which they are doing, of providing support and services to vulnerable citizens while providing a robust clinical experience for students in the healthcare field. So pursuant to the authority contained in Article 7, Section 14C of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, the city may enter into CEAs with any public or private entity subject to the council's approval. That's background for the council and also for the public. And if there are no questions, I'll move for approval. It's been properly moved and seconded here by Councilman Thomas. Members, please vote your machines. 7 yeas, no nays, and that ordinance passes. Thank you.
At the bottom of the page, we have ordinance calendar number 33,911 by council members Green, Harris, and King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into the First Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the City of New Orleans and Start Corporation relative to accomplish a valuable public purpose of promoting health, hope, and dignity for New Orleans homeless through accessible and comprehensive care regardless of a client's ability to pay by providing shelter and social services to homeless and those susceptible to homeless individuals regardless of their ability to pay, to modify the provisions thereof and extend the term thereof for 2 years as more fully set forth in the First Amendment, attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made a part hereof, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Members and the public, this ordinance will allow the city to extend the previously executed CEA between the City of New Orleans and Start Corporation for a period of 2 years. The CEA will provide for comprehensive care services to promote health, hope, and dignity for the New Orleans unhoused population. Under the CEA, Start Corporation will work with the City of New Orleans Health Care for the homeless to ensure coordination of care regarding shelter and social services provided at the city's low barrier shelter and adolescent drop-in center. Pursuant to the authority contained in Article 7, Section 14C of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, the city may enter into CEAs with any public or private entity subject to the council's approval. That approval is being sought today to extend for 2 years. I move for approval. It's been properly moved and then seconded by Councilmember Harris. Members, please vote your machines. Council, I see 7 yeas, no nays, and this ordinance passes. Thank you for your support.
We're now on top of page 45. Ordinance calendar number 33,912 has been withdrawn.
So ordered, but let me just speak on why we withdrew it. So this is the outdoor live entertainment permitting regulations. The reason why we had to withdraw it is because we failed to properly advertise it. So we're going to follow the proper advertising procedures and refile it. But obviously we let all the advocates know of what was happening. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So ordered.
Ordinance calendar number 33,913 has been deferred to November the 3rd. On top of page 46, ordinance calendar number 33,934 by Councilmember Thomas, an ordinance to temporarily waive certain fees, permit fees, and requirements within and around the Oliver Bush Park located at 2500 Fats Domino Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana, in conjunction with the Lord Night Ward Community Wellness Consortiums. Antoine Fats Domino Street renaming celebration event on Saturday, October 15, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. to specify the duration and boundaries of said waiver and to provide otherwise with respect thereto.
Mr. Burnside.
So as the council's aware, I'm against 100% giveaways. The fundamental reason is fairness. There's plenty of people that don't know that they can get free NORD access. A lesser but very real reason, of course, is NORD funding is always a tricky proposition in the past. They rarely get all the funding we might hope that they get. If you're going to offer free access, you really should post something permanently online. Like if you want a free NORD access, go here, fill out this form. And it shouldn't really require council action anymore. It should just be part of the NORD process. It builds bitterment and resentment in some people who think that favoritism is showed. And it's not as transparent as opaque as we might all hope. And I don't really think it does you any political benefit in the long run, to be 100% honest. Although I'm not an elected official and I could be wrong in that, but one hand giveth, one hand taketh away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Any other comment? Move adoption. Second by Councilmember Green, all in favor.
Sorry. Still, I'm just reading.
At the bottom of,
7 yeas, no nays, it was adopted.
it's six.
Oh, just 6.
Yeah, it's 6.
Okay.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,935 by Councilmember Morrell. An ordinance to amend and reordain section 70-417 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to prohibit assignments and transfer of city contracts and require city council approval for a waiver of said prohibition and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Many of you have heard me previously express concern regarding the presence of assignment clauses in multi-million-dollar contracts. For those of you who don't know, an assignment clause basically gives the recipient of the contract the ability to then give that contract to a third party if they're willing to step into that person's shoes. I have long held the position that assignment clauses are against public policy. My position is if you're going to have a competitive RFQ process to select someone to get a contract, that person should not be able to then grant that contract to another party who didn't go through that rigorous process. So this simply says that you cannot do assignment clauses in contracts. And if there is a transfer of ownership that requires consent of the city, that is considered considered an assignment and requires approval. So it prevents it arbitrarily happening as against public policy. I move that we adopt. Are there any comments? Okay. Please vote your machines. 6 yeas, no nays, it's adopted.
And now on top of page 47, we have 33,936 by council members Moreno, Morrell, Harris, Green, Jeruso, King by request. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the Biodistrict New Orleans for a term greater than 1 year for the public purpose of using incremental increases in undedicated taxes collected within the boundaries of the district to induce economic development and other activities necessary or convenient thereto for the enhancement of bioscience and health products included but not limited to projects as more particularly identified in the revised statute 33-903972 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes within the district in the city of New Orleans as more fully detailed in the cooperative endeavor agreement form attached hereto as Exhibit A and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The Economic Development and Special Development Projects Committee recommended approval.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is the Biodistrict CEA. We had a roughly 2.5-hour meeting on this yesterday, but we've had many, many meetings on this CEA in the past because we were constantly revising it to add additional oversight measures, accountability measures. Most recently, in this latest version, we added some additional provisions dealing with ethics and also for the city getting a portion of intellectual property proceeds for projects that were invested in by the Biodistrict. So I know that this has been an incredibly long process, but I believe we're finally at a point now where I'm certainly comfortable moving forward with the CEA because it has the right amount of checks and balances, in particular with the budgeting and what their master plan will look like as well. Councilmember Green.
Madam Chair, allow me to be a bit redundant because I just said this less than 24 hours ago, I guess, or a little bit more than 24 hours ago. But I want to thank the members of the public who gave input, who attended public meetings, who provided information in writing, who did research, and who provided hours because we have a better document now, as many will admit, including, I think, the members of the board. It's important that we recognize that, yes, we have been talking about a biodistrict in our city for since the late 1994. I said that yesterday too, since 1990s. And I want to just emphasize that many cities have moved forward and have been very successful in developing their biodistricts. This is a very significant undertaking today, but it's important to recognize, but because of the public input, because of the public meetings and the like, The city council has the ability to influence and approve the master plan and also to influence and approve the budget. That's a responsibility that we take very seriously, and I assure the public that we recognize that any imperfections in the cooperative endeavor will be worked out. But I'm just looking forward to having the opportunity as a city council member to have an input on the development of the plan and budget of a endeavor that is so important to our city and is going to help to diversify our economy. I look forward to voting in favor on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Green, Councilmember Harris, followed by Jeruso.
Thank you so much, Council President. I'm very excited to have the bio district within District B. I think this is going to be an economic driver for all of New Orleans, not just District B. In fact, I was talking to the president of Dillard University yesterday, and she is excited about the possibilities for her students, including affordable housing opportunities within the bio district, so that people who are working there can afford to live in the bio district. So I think this is a great opportunity for the city, for the people of New Orleans, and it's an opportunity to keep talented people, young people here working in New Orleans. So thank you again, Council President, for taking the lead on this.
Councilmember Jeruso.
Thank you. I want to echo number one that I think want to thank Council President. This took time and diligence in order to get this done. It was not rushed. There was a long process here. It went through the legislature before it came back to the council. So the respect to the idea that this has been vetted for a long time is important. The other thing too is we talk frequently in these chambers about how there's too few industries in the city of New Orleans, that we have tourism as the primary one and that we have to rely on other things to prop up the economy. This is a chance for us to have the next big thing here in New Orleans when it comes to economic development. If you look at other cities, whether it's Houston or Birmingham, they are thriving in large part because they have strong medical districts. And I'd like to see New Orleans be a leader in that regard as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso. I do have public comment. Michael Burnside, followed by Susan Johnson.
So in regards to the bio district, I also have been involved with it for a little bit of a long time. I went to the 3 meetings of the Spirit of Charity, got a little bit of good food, was inside the nursing building there. All very nice. I read last week in the newspaper, the CEA, there's a lot of talk in there about bonds. And once the bonds are sold, you guys don't have the right to mess with the bond repayments. Affordable housing is mentioned exactly once in the entire document. I'm not in favor of this particular thing, despite Ms. Harris's generosity and Andy Complin's competency and honesty, because I'm not in favor of the 2%. I've said it before and I'll say it again in public. There's not sufficient protection in this document for the city in regards to inflation. Inflation this year, depending on who you talk to, is either 8.7% or 9.6%. And a 2% protection is costly to the city. If this had been signed 1 year ago, the city would have lost $750,000 in purchasing power. I sent all of you emails to this effect. And I don't really feel like taking a lot more of your time, but I do feel that not allowing for a high inflation was an error. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Susan Johnson? And then we'll get online comment after that.
Susan Johnson, 2822 LePage Street. I'm not paid to be here. First, this request for $70 million in sales tax monies will benefit entities that are tax exempt. City sales taxes from the general fund are going to tax exempt universities. Tulane, especially in recent history, has not been a good friend to neighbors of its uptown campus who are selling their homes to escape the spread of commercial dorm development in which it refuses to intervene. And yet at the other end of town, we're expected to hand over our tax money to Tulane, spirit of charity indeed. Next, critics have pointed out the following. no approved master plan beforehand, no independent cost benefit analysis, no specific projects identified and approved. Where is the confirmed approved data? Finally, how often have we citizens come to city council with our complaints, especially on land use, only to be told, where's your data? Not feelings or opinions, but data. Somehow this doesn't apply for the biodistrict. Science fronted by business without data, really. So we can only assume there's a man behind the curtain who really wants this thing to pass. The biodistrict will get the $70 million, our money, which they'll use without a firm plan, and will fall back on scripture. Scripture. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, render unto the Lord that which is the Lord's. You'll have the money, but speaking for myself, you won't have my agreement by my free will. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anita with public comment online.
First comment is from William Bradshaw. He says, I am writing to express my strong support for the biodistrict redevelopment efforts led by the Greater New Orleans Foundation and a number of other key players. This type of transformative redevelopment effort comes along once in a generation, if that, and we're lucky as New Orleanians to have it come at a point where so many pillar institutions in our city or state, GNOF, Tulane, LSU, and many others are poised to support it. From the beginning, these efforts have made a centerpiece of the redevelopment process, a broad-based vision that put economic and social equity at the core of their vision and goals. I've spent the last 17 years deeply engaged in the redevelopment of this city and the expansion of economic opportunity throughout our communities. Never in that time have we had a more crucial opportunity to make a lasting impact on our future trajectory than we do with this effort. I wanted to make sure that you're aware of my full-throated support of the biodistrict and the charity hospital redevelopment process, and would ask that this letter be read as public comment at the meeting if such an opportunity exists. The next comment is from Colin Felsman on behalf of the Faubourg St. John Neighborhood Association. He says the Faubourg St. John Neighborhood Association would like to express its strong support for the biodistrict. As a historic neighborhood adjacent to the proposed district, we believe this can serve as a catalyst for equitable economic growth and provide quality local job outside the tourism industry. At our October 4th meeting, neighbors that work in the healthcare industry emphasized the promise that the biodistrict holds for fostering collaboration between our cities, universities, and medical institutions, as well as the thoughtful engagement with our fellow neighborhood associations throughout the planning process. We strongly urge the council to approve the biodistrict. Next comment is from Christopher Khalil. He says, I thank the council for their leadership and I urge the council to vote in favor of the important matter of the biodistrict CEA for the benefit of all citizens of New Orleans and for the future of our medical innovation community. We have a comment from Mary Meising-Gabala who says, I'm a biologist and a retired educator, and as such, I am a supporter of the biodistrict. Biomedical research, economic development, keeping some of the best and the brightest young people here are all good things. Unfortunately, as a lifelong tax-paying resident, I'm opposed to the cooperative endeavor agreement. This document has numerous legal and financial issues that are not to the advantage of the city nor our tax-paying residents. There is no master plan, no specific projects. There has been no independent legal or financial analysis and no public outreach other than what has been done by the Mid-City Neighborhood Organization and word of mouth by residents. The vast amount of New Orleans residents know nothing about the CEA. This is appalling, given that this agreement will give approximately $70 million over 17 years to an unelected state board. This money will come out of our general fund, money that is desperately needed to fund our public safety, streets, drainage, garbage pickup, youth programs, public health, parks, etc. This agreement, if approved, is setting a terrible precedent of allowing a city contract to be established without adequate city safeguards. Very notable and worrisome is that the errors and omissions in this CEA that have been corrected over the past year have been identified, brought up publicly, and corrected due to the actions of ordinary citizens. Who is looking out for the city and her taxpaying residents? Please withdraw the CEA, have an outside legal and financial analysis done so that a thorough due diligence can be done and done correctly. Let's do it right for the biodistrict, the city, and the tax-paying residents. Corey Patty comments, I write to express my support for the council's passage of the CEA between the city and the biodistrict New Orleans. Under effective guidance of this council, this agreement, as now written, reflects a bright future for New Orleans, its residents, and its economy as we invest in jobs of the future. I commend the council's vision and leadership in support of this measure. Next comment is from Dr. Aaron Wolfson, who says, I've lived in FSJ for 22 years on North Rendon Street and was previously an officer of the Faubourg St. John Neighborhood Association. I apologize that I can't attend the meeting in person, but wanted to share my thoughts about a topic that I believe will be discussed at today's meeting. I'm writing to offer my very strong support and to urge the City Council to likewise support the efforts to continue strengthening the New Orleans Biodistrict. As a healthcare professional and biotech entrepreneur, I've struggled for years to understand the market forces that prevent innovative ideas from successful monetization coming out of New Orleans. There have been beacons of hope over the years, such as the New Orleans Bio-Innovation Center, but resources have been thin and the city has lacked the critical mass necessary to draw research, development, and investment interest. My understanding is that the current proposal is geared towards developing good-paying healthcare jobs and will leverage resources from our academic medical centers to spur collaboration, research, and eventual technology transfer. There appear to be no new proposed tax liabilities, and I believe our neighborhood quality of life will only be enhanced. With important issues such as crime, income inequality, and housing issues, we should be championing efforts to move our city in the right direction. Thank you for the work to protect our neighborhood. William Vandermeer comments, I am opposed to the cooperative endeavor agreement. This document has numerous legal and financial issues that are not to the advantage of the city nor our taxpaying residents. There's no master plan, no specific projects. There has been no independent legal or financial analysis and no public outreach other than what's been done by the Mid-City Neighborhood Organization and word of mouth by residents. The vast amount of New Orleans residents know nothing about the CEA. This is appalling given that this agreement will give approximately $70 million every 17 years to an unelected state board. This money will come out of our general fund, money that's desperately needed to fund our public safety, streets, drainage, garbage pickup, youth programs, public health, parks, etc. Sally M. Seaman, PhD, comments, it has come to my attention that City Council will be voting today on the Biodistrict Cooperative Endeavor Agreement. This comes as a shock since there still has been no citywide outreach for community input on this issue, despite the fact that taxpayer funds will be diverted for the CEA. Such funds are urgently needed for such pressing problems as dealing with rampant crime, a lack of youth services programs, unfinished street repairs, urban blight, etc. In addition, there's no master plan for the CEA, no specific projects are identified, and more importantly, there has been no cost benefit analysis to determine if the CEA is a good investment of city funds. These pressing issues must be addressed and citizen input sought before the City Council votes to approve the CEA. And the last comment is from Michelle Schlafly, who says, the literal showcase and pageantry of high dollar players that was orchestrated by the Biodistrict's Andy Copeland at yesterday's Economic Development Committee meeting was quite the spectacle, truly worthy of a replay. It was all Mr. Copeland needed to shift the narrative towards a look at the wonderful things we're doing for our city and away from the real underbelly of what really matters in the CEA document you'll sign today. Thank you for committing and giving away $70 million gift to an unelected board who have no master plan. Such wonderful hopes and dreams are ahead. I hope Mr. Copeland has a master plan or something to show for it in 1 year when he comes back to the council. And to council Member Moreno, your banal thank you to the neighbors at yesterday's meeting was truly a kick in the teeth to those who worked tirelessly to get the CEA changed to a better deal for the city. We were never against the idea of a biodistrict. We are against this CEA in its written form, and it's still a bad deal for the city, no matter how many safety nets you think you are putting into play. Regardless, we achieved what we set out to do, and that was to change the legislation, thanks to Royce Duplessis, and remove our residential areas from the biodistrict, as was promised by the previous biodistrict board back in 2014. And in the interim, until Mr. Copland comes back next year, you might also think about all the high dollar players who were in the room yesterday. All the things they talked about are things that are already happening without the presence of the biodistrict. These are the same folks who have a great deal of money and property and are already receiving many benefits from the city. Why do we even need a biodistrict? Councilman Green noted that he'd rather have a biodistrict than not have one, but the CEA will likely prove to be funding an entity that does nothing more than pay salaries and produce fill in the blank. It's yet to be seen.
Are those all the comments? Thank you. All right. So once again, this has been, since I've had the biodistrict CEA, a process that's likely taken about a year now. It was at the very end of the last term that I filed the CEA. I've withdrawn it many times due to public input and revised it so that there could be additional oversight and accountability measures. It's taken a great deal of work. We went to the legislature to get additional changes. Once again, thank you to Representative Duplessis for moving forward on those additional changes when neighbors wanted the overall, the boundaries of the biodistrict scaled down. So we've come a long way. And I know that some folks wanted this to happen overnight and happen very quickly because they believe it's important to take this bold step. And I do too think it's important to take this bold step, but we need to step carefully. And I believe that, because we paid attention to what neighbors were saying, what the public was saying, we're at the position that we are now with a CEA that is responsive to the needs that they brought up and addresses many of their concerns. So with that, I will move adoption. It's been seconded by Councilmember Harris. 6 yeas, no nays.
Yes.
Councilmember Morel for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I believe there's representative of those present who'd like to speak. Ms. Hill?
Good afternoon.
Good
Pardon me,
afternoon.
Councilmember, I'm a little unclear. I wasn't sure whether you were planning to make a statement first.
I was going to let you speak before I made my statement. Just
Okay,
we have a pretty packed agenda. I know that it's a silent protest, but I want to make sure that we got this while obviously the media was still here because they tend to peter out after a certain point in our meetings. So I want to make sure they were here for everything that needs to be said. So whenever you're ready.
thank you. I wasn't planning to speak, so we'll be brief. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kashana Hill. I serve as Executive Director of the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. I'd like to say that we are all here today, members of the Healthy Homes Coalition, to encourage you to continue to support this common sense measure that would create basic health and safety standards for housing across the city of New Orleans. The fact that many of our tenants deal with substandard housing is absolutely not a new issue to any of you. The Healthy Homes Ordinance itself is not a new issue. I personally have been working on this ordinance and this issue since 2012, a period now of over 10 years. We are here. The Healthy Homes Coalition is made up of over 60 organizations that work with renters across New Orleans. We're here because we're concerned. We're wondering what's taking so long to move forward. As I've said, these issues are not new. We want to ensure that you are clear, that you have the support of the majority of this city as you work to move this ordinance forward. The ordinance is something that would benefit not only renters who make up the majority of our city, but also homeowners as well. Now, most of our members of the Healthy Home Coalition do not collect hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in rental income or own dozens of properties. They have no other way to give you feedback other than participating in this process, which they have continued to do time and time again, by making sacrifices to show up here and also by emailing and calling your offices. We are asking you to remember your constituents as you make decisions about this ordinance. Remember, please, that this is not an issue of landlords versus tenants. You have continued to hear from landlords across the city who do support this common sense measure. Please remember that the Healthy Homes Ordinance benefits us all. It protects renters from dangerous conditions, but it also protects homeowners who live next to these properties, typically in historically Black neighborhoods long plagued by disinvestment. And this ordinance starts to address some of the underlying causes of crime and violence in our city. It helps us to prepare our housing stock for more climate change fueled storms, and the data it generates will allow us to better target resources when we need to respond to future disasters. We're asking you to please reject any amendments that leave out small buildings across the city and that leave out our most vulnerable residents. We are inviting you to commit to passing this ordinance on November 3rd so that we no longer have to ask people to choose between losing their home or living in a home that makes them sick. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. I appreciate those comments. I have a very brief response. To be clear, I support healthy homes. I filed the Healthy Homes Bill to protect renters from substandard and unsafe rentals. And though healthy homes has been discussed at length by the council for years without results, I'm the only council member to ever actually file a bill on healthy homes. We, and by we, I mean the advocates, my staff, and I have spent endless hours working towards this goal. Since the beginning, I've been quite candid in my position that I would work with everyone who was willing to work with me. To that end, when meeting with those opposed to this bill, I've begun each meeting with the following statement. There will be a healthy homes bill. If you're here to express legitimate concerns to me to help improve the bill, this meeting will be worthwhile. If you're here to try and talk me out of it, let's not waste each other's time. Most opponents left after I made that statement. My colleagues on the council have been tremendously supportive of this bill and appreciate my process. As recently as Tuesday, I had a meeting with proponents and opponents face to face, and I understood these meetings as productive. No one approached myself or my staff that there was an issue until I began seeing posts on social media last night. It's apparent today that some advocates would prefer the bill be passed as filed without compromise or amendments. I remain committed to passing a healthy homes bill and stand by the work I've done with a variety of advocacy groups. However, as it is apparent now that some would prefer a different type of author and process, I want to give those groups the opportunity to find another author who will fit that mold. I remain available for additional dialogue, support, and re-engagement on this bill if you so choose, but I do feel like, based upon the feedback I've gotten, that there are some who would prefer a different process. So that's my statement. I appreciate y'all being here today. My bill is scheduled for November 3rd. If there is not the will to move forward with the bill as it's being currently drafted, then I will take no offense. I'm here happy to help and work with it, but that's where I'm at this time, Ms. Hill.
Council member, if you don't mind.
I do not.
Many have attempted to do this for a very long time. And very often you guys remind me how long I've been around here. And then the other day I told you that I think it's one of the most important steps that I've seen a council member or a legislator take in this area. I understand sometimes there's impasse or there's disagreement, but on behalf of everyone who's ever served, who's ever dealt with this issue, this is the first time someone has wanted to take the risk and the challenges. And let me say up here, we don't always agree on a lot of things, but when someone sticks it out there legislatively to try to make a difference, then maybe what you don't need is opposition. What you need is cooperative relationships where you can gain support. I just think that we're in a time right now where opposition just kind of rules the day, whether it's on social media, whether it's in our politics. And it's never good to blindside somebody or ambush somebody. It's not good when politicians do it. And it's not good when people who are not elected officials do it. But I just think that's where we are today. But you don't have to back down to anyone in terms of your intent and in terms of what you've done to at least try to demand some accountability in this issue. You did the right thing.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. That's all I have. So I appreciate y'all being here today. I appreciate every time y'all show up. I do think that it is beyond unconscionable what renters have to deal with. And I think it's an important issue. And whether it's me or someone else, I support any effort to try and resolve it. So thank you, Ms. Hill. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,937 has been deferred to November the 3rd. Council members, are we ready to go to the 1 o'clock matter?
You ready? Yes,
On-
ma'am.
On top of page 53, motion M22-467, council members Morel, Moreno, Jeruso, Harris, King, Green, and Thomas. Direct the City Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to amend and reordain ordinance number 4,264 MCS as amended by ordinance number 26,413 MCS as amended from time to time, the comprehensive zoning ordinance to amend Article 19 to establish a new interim zoning district to be named the Residential Short-Term Rental Interim Zoning District, the intent of which is to prohibit certain uses for all zoning district as indicated in the official zoning maps of the city. The prohibited uses are A, residential short-term rental, small, B, residential short-term rental, large, C, residential short-term rental, partial unit.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, this IZD deals with the previous IZD we passed regarding short-term rentals. The previous IZD we passed in the wake of the Fifth Circuit ruling tried to create a mechanism or scheme in which we basically tried to split the baby and allow for individuals to freeze new short-term rentals, but to allow individuals who had a valid short-term rental to essentially be grandfathered in through March 1st, 2023, when a new short-term rental ordinance that we are all working together on would replace it. After reviewing, once again, the Fifth Circuit ruling, after speaking with counsel regarding developments at district court, we have unfortunately now in the position of saying that rather than grandfathering those individuals in who have existing permits or had permits pending, this new IZD will be much more restrictive. Essentially, the new IZD will say that there are no new permits, and any permits that expire shall expire on the dates on which they're currently set to expire. And if those permits expire during the IZD process, they are gone. So essentially, we are ending any new permits, and we are allowing all permits that are currently pending, who are currently legitimate permits that expire in any period before March 1st to expire with no extension. We're leaving in place the fact that the IZD will end on March 1st, and as the intent of this council on March 1st to have a replacement STR ordinance that will address the issues that have plagued short-term rentals for years while acknowledging the decision of the Fifth Circuit on how we define short-term rentals. That's what it does. Are there any comments? Okay, we've got a comment in. We'll wait for. Thank you. while you're coming up, Morgan, just for clarification, the Fifth Circuit ruling specifically said that in ordinance, we cannot differentiate between a residential short-term rental with a homestead exemption versus a residential residential short-term rental without a homestead exemption. The previous short-term rental ordinances relied upon that distinction it was perceived to favor those with the homestead exemption versus those that do not. And after the Fifth Circuit ruling, as we continue to recreate and correct some of the issues inside the short-term rental ordinance, this will also deal with addressing the Fifth Circuit's position in that new legislation. Morgan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council. I appreciate your explanation of that because I just read this ordinance last night and it was a little bit confusing. As someone who has been probably one of the original Airbnbs 2013, when there were only 300 in the city, and it was meant to be a mom and pop operation. I've been through every single change, every single ordinance change. In 2016, it opened that new ordinance opened the floodgates to the corporate takeover of Airbnb and the takeover of our neighborhoods, which engendered the need to have legislation to stop that in 2019. And so now here we are again. I read the ruling of the Supreme, was it Fourth Circuit?
Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit.
And, it's interesting because the corporate deep pockets have the ability and the resources to put cases like that before the court and follow them through. Whereas the original intention of STRs was for homeowners and the like to have put extra money in their pocket to pay their bills, pay city taxes, etc. It has really gone all the way out the window and way far than anybody ever anticipated. Now we're looking at where we're zoning residential property to become commercial so people can get around the residential restrictions. We're looking at downtown buildings going all the way STR. We're looking at rooms above Canal Street, floors above Canal Street buildings, hotels. So all the deep pocket people are in the game, but still the mom and pop are pushed out. But the paradox is we have to save our neighborhoods too. So this is a very tough situation. And I appreciate the stress you guys are under to try to meet everybody's needs. I just went up to STR just now to try to renew mine. Can't do it. I'm out of business. I lost 2.5 years, 3 years of income due to COVID and the pandemic and the IDA. I have no business and I can't renew what I had. So I'm not the only one. So here we are today trying to figure out where do we go from here. Is this the answer? I don't know. I just read the thing. But what you're basically saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that no more residential permits are available in this city and that none will be renewed, as you just said, once they fall out of their expiration date. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. So what about commercial? If all these folks that are commercially zoned, they get the hand up now because they're the only game in town?
Essentially, what we're doing is responding to the Fifth Circuit decision, which only challenged residential permits.
Okay.
Now, what I will tell you is when we rewrite the entire short-term rental ordinance, it will deal with all aspects of short-term rentals.
Okay.
So it will cover everything. But as far as the IZD is in response to the Fifth Circuit ruling, and the current IZD, as it's been corrected, is on the advice of counsel as well as the intent and advice upon what we saw at the district court. So I absolutely agree with you. It's a tremendous hardship. The original IZD attempted to address that.
Right.
Under the original IZD, because you were filing for a renewal and a proper renewal, under the old IZD, the original one we passed, you would have been able to renew.
Correct.
Unfortunately, under the new IZD, you will not be able to renew, and that's by virtue of the Fifth Circuit decision.
Okay. And so there was no other alternative.
There is not another alternative because there's not another alternative. That's
Okay.
It's simply the state we're in, and I would not disagree with you. There are a lot of deep pockets that are trying to make us go back to the days of the wild, wild west of residential STRs, when people could have their houses bought from under them to become whole home rentals. And I would not disagree that the entire litigation that we're fighting is to do just that. But I think this council is very committed to, in March, passing a short-term rental ordinance that respects people, especially, those people who are small operators who are trying to get by, and also protects the integrity of neighborhoods, because as you know, because you live in the historic 7th Ward, there has been an effort over the years by people who don't live here, don't intend to live here, and don't, to add very clearly, don't intend to have local property management to address concerns of neighbors. We have to find that fine line between the two. And that's something that this council is committed to doing by March. I mean, honestly, we have the budget process, other things we have to get through. I wish we could do it sooner, but even doing it in March is going to be us really putting our nose to the grindstone, but we're committed to it.
Well, and I believe that because I think the 2019 ordinance restricting to homestead exempted properties was a really important move to regulate the proliferation, because not only did the 2016 ordinance open the floodgates to corporate deep pockets who bought up single family homes willy-nilly, that also drove up our property tax assessments in 2019 as well. And so people are getting hit doubly with the fact that they can't make any extra revenue on their side of their double, next to them. And they're now suffering under tremendous property tax increases because of the heightened assessments due to people being from the East Coast willing to pay $500,000 for a 1,200-foot shotgun double, So I ask you to keep working and know that you have citizens like myself that are with you. And we want to be at the table and involved however we can be to help guide this legislation and make sure it is fair to everybody.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate you being here, Morgan.
I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Are there any other online comments? And no comments from anyone present? Okay, you have a comment. I'm sorry, Mr. Green.
I think Councilman DeRusso was first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know there were.
It's on your machine. Just saying, right there.
I am
set yourself up
being
for that.
loud capped by the grandpa of the council of technology. I'm sorry, Mr. DeRusso. Please.
Thank you. And what I was going to say is also, I'm not one to usually amplify on your comments because you're so blunt, but today may be that rare exception where, Morgan, to the points that you made, we're here because of the people who are challenging the law. I mean, we are duty bound to follow what the Fifth Circuit has said, but as Councilmember Morrell has pointed out, there are plaintiffs who challenged the original law, and then they filed another injunction based on the IZD that we have. So this is all that we can do in order to comply with the law and at the same time deal with the challenges that the litigants are making. And so I know everybody needs to be at the table. We need to find something that is workable for people who we know are using this income when they live in their home, when it's their homestead property, when it's been there a long time. I'm seeing comments about people who are worried about paying their taxes and all of the rising costs that are part of that right now, whether it's your energy bill, your sewage and water board bill, the increase in inflation just in buying your groceries, all of that is part of this. But at this point, to Councilmember Morrell and what you said, this is all we can do at this time, and then move as quickly as possible to find something that fits within the framework of the Fifth Circuit.
I'll wait for her comment.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, whenever you're ready. And after Ms. Johnson, we have Mr. Burnside.
Okay. So my name is Ariel Johnson, and my husband and I run an Airbnb out of our house. We it's kind of connecting to our house. It's like a room, has bathroom, like a hotel in a way. There's no kitchen or anything, but it really supports our family. We have a young child now, and the income is like if we cancel our Airbnb now, it's gonna be just for December, like $4,000. We're not gonna have because it's not gonna be legal. So I just don't really understand this bill, I guess. I would like to get more information about it.
Well, essentially, the Fifth Circuit ruled that, this is previously, the Fifth Circuit ruled that all of our Airbnb restrictions were basically invalid because they drew a distinction between those people like yourself and Morgan who have a homestead exemption who are renting out a piece of your property,
Yeah.
individuals who do not live here and aren't from here who are investors that just rent out houses. And in doing so, they basically kind of blew up the Airbnb law and said that anybody can basically run an Airbnb in any part of the city, which is really against public policy, because part of the reason why that was done in 2019 was to prevent the proliferation of out-of-state investors buying up housing stock to run Airbnbs. The original IZD we had preserved people like yourself and Morgan and said, listen, for those people who've been running properly, who've been doing everything that they should do, we're going to freeze all the new permits. And for people who have a permit, we're going to let them renew it through March 1st when the new ordinance comes in effect.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the plaintiffs who represent the out-of-state people, who are the buy up the property, not live here people, every advice we've gotten from counsel between the Fifth Circuit and their motions they filed in district court, the federal level, they are interpreting that our previous IZD, which still continues those people who have a homestead exemption to have a short-term rental, is in violation of the Fifth Circuit's decision. And they are taking that up at a legal hearing, I believe, next month to address that. So on advice of counsel, so that our entire STR ordinance doesn't implode, we are forced into the position to say, no, we can't allow the renewals either, because that's still going to be in violation of the Fifth Circuit decision. So this IZD is in response to a lawsuit filed by those people that are not from here, who are from out of state, who are trying to blow up the short-term rental law. And unfortunately, we're put in a position where we have to do this.
Okay. Do you guys understand how many people aren't going to be able to come to the city because of
We understand that, which is why the original IZD allowed for those people like yourself, to have that ability to continue to have a short-term rental. Because of litigation, we are not in a position where we can continue to do that. So we understand it. We don't do this gleefully. We're actually quite upset that we have to even do this at all. But because of litigation, the way that it's currently going, the options we have before us are to do this or to have no short-term rental enforcement, because basically everyone the next day would be able to open a short-term rental across the entire city.
Mm-hmm. And so if everyone is able to have a short-term rental throughout the city, and then March 1st, I think you guys said, comes along.
March 1st is the time where this IZD ends, and the
Yeah.
council will be passing a new ordinance to replace it, at which point everyone will be able to apply for a short-term rental permit again.
So okay, so let's just say that you guys don't pass this bill, right? And then everyone floods the market. March 1st comes around and you have new laws. So
We are in a position as policymakers that, though I appreciate this is a hardship for you, the city is overwhelmingly against there being a flooded market of STRs in every single neighborhood for, that would be 5 months, where basically every single home, every single property in the entire city of New Orleans would be eligible for an STR with no restrictions.
Mhm.
So we're put in the untenable position of either we have to be more restrictive or have no restrictions. And as policymakers, I mean, sometimes you're put in positions where you have two bad choices, and you have to make, as a policymaker, pick the slightly better of the two bad choices.
So you think for 5 months, it will get that bad?
Yes.
That, like by March 1st?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just being candid. I appreciate you being here. I understand. I can tell you, we've received quite a few emails and calls about people who are going to deal with this hardship, but I guess my position would be, I appreciate that everyone is angry at the council for making this position. You should be more angry at the out-of-state proliferating short-term rental people who've put us in this position. Because we had a compromise we thought was workable. They don't want any compromise.
So once you have this bill on March 1st, how is this going to change the out-of-state people from suing, like continuing to sue you?
The IZD isn't, well, no, she's not confused. She's saying that in March 5th, when the new law comes in effect,
Yeah.
we'll prevent them from doing it. The reality is that the new short-term rental law is going to have to acknowledge you cannot make a distinction between homestead exemptions and non-homestead exemptions, but there are a tremendous amount of other tools that are available. For example, on the original bill that was passed in 2015, 16, the first bill, 15. In 2015, one of the original clauses that was disregarded was limiting short-term rentals to 2 per block face, for example. Those kind of things do not discriminate between a homestead or non-homestead exemption property. So there are other things we can put in place that are restrictive that don't tie it to a homestead exemption or non-homestead exemption. And the council is going to look at the things that we can do that don't rely upon that homestead exemption or non-homestead exemption distinction. So it'll be a new policy, but it's not going to include a preference for people that have a homestead exemption over those who do not, because the Fifth Circuit has ruled you cannot use that as the factor to determine who's allowed to have a short-term rental versus who is not.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Burnside.
One's always tempted to destruction, but construction usually is a little more useful to other people. Back in 2015, whatever it was, there was an idea that was floated that was shot down, which was to require a person, an actual biological person on each property that was short-term rented. And at the time, it was sort of advanced as you could get hold of somebody if there's a problem, and you'd have a person to talk to help solve problems as far as people dropping beer bottles on other people's front yards and all the rest of the stuff that may or may not go with any specific short-term rental.
And that is certainly one of the things being considered, because basically you can require a property manager to be present, and that would cover someone who's co-sharing part of their property versus someone who's just running the whole property.
And I think it's important to make them physically present.
You're 100% correct.
Instead of, one of the compromises was going to post a phone number or something where you could contact.
We're
somebody.
going to do that.
So-
We're going to do that. We're actually going to do that too.
But I really want all of you to think about the advantages to all people if there is a biological human being whom you can approach and discuss your problems, who is paid, whether through the ownership issue or through being a manager through a property management. It's a paid job, maybe part-time, maybe not. But I think a lot of the incentive for the market is the high profit margin of not having employees. You know, you only have to get your house cleaned every now and then. You only have to deal with your neighbors every now and then. A lot of these houses sit empty for long periods of time. So if you required a human being to be on the physical property and responding to, stimulus through phone calls or whatever, I think some of the more high-flying, deep pocket people might not find the return on investment sufficient for them to come and buy the whole city.
Mr. Burnside, great minds think alike, and that certainly is a provision that would address the homestead exemption versus non-homestead exemption issue. Mr. Green.
I just wanted to say for a second that in a challenging time based on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, the council is taking a very responsible action that is very supportive of the neighborhoods in which people take so much pride. There is a little bit of confusion, and I've had that discussion with persons. This doesn't affect your ability to rent your units out in your duplex, your triplex, or your fourplex. if you've been renting them in the past. Some people have been a little bit confused about that. Normal rental. This is not this, right? Long-term rentals, it's important to recognize that because I've had that discussion with a couple of people. This is a short-term rental, which is a different policy, but this doesn't change the zoning. If you've had a duplex and it was rented out in the past, that duplex can still be rented out in the past. But based on the alternative available, based on that Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, I can tell you that there are a lot of people who live in neighborhoods that would not want to have entire blocks bought by those who could operate short-term rentals there. So this is a responsible action. We'll address it again come March with some creativity. But this is a very favorable response, and those who are supportive of their residential neighborhoods should recognize exactly why we need to take this action.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Is there any more comment? Okay, with that, I'll move that we adopt the interim zoning district. Mr. Green seconds, please vote your machines. 7 yeas, no nays. The IZD is adopted.
We're gonna go back to page 48. We have motion line over M22 383 has been deferred to November the 3rd. Motion line over M22 384 has been deferred to November the 3rd. On top of page 49, we have motion M22 451 by council members Jeruso, Moreno, Morel, Green, and Thomas, approving the amendment to the classified pay plan, library, new classification, library archivist, as adopted by the Civil Service Commission at its meeting of September 19th, 2022, to be effective October 23rd, 2022, in accordance with Article 10, Section 10 of the Constitution.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. These matters were discussed at Budget Committee and now they're up for approval. I'll move to approve the first. Second by Councilmember Harris. 7 yeas, no nays.
Motion M22 452 by council members Jeruso, Moreno, Morel, Green, and Thomas, approving the amendment to the classified pay plan, the library, new classification, library fiscal administrator, as adopted by the Civil Service Commission at its meeting of September 19th, 2022, to be effective October 23rd, 2022, in accordance with Article 10, Section 10 of the Constitution of Louisiana.
Move for approval. Second by Councilmember Harris. 7 yeas, no nays.
At the bottom of the page, motion M22 453 by council members Jeruso, Moreno, Morel, Green, and Thomas, approving the amendment to the classified pay plan, sewage and water board, new special rate of pay, as adopted by the Civil Service Commission at its meeting of September 19th, 2022, to be effective October 23rd, 2022, in accordance with Article 10, Section 10 of the Constitution of Louisiana.
Councilmember Green, is this the portion of our meeting where you promote jobs in the city of New Orleans?
Well, it just happens to be. Members of the public, what we are doing when we pass this is in 3 separate motions, we will have created different pay scales for jobs at the city of New Orleans. I'm glad to see some jobs being filled, but I just want to emphasize to the public, there's never enough emphasis that there are significant vacancies at our city at a time when our city can use your expertise and your resources, sewage and water board and the city and the like. I encourage citizens to go to NOLA.gov/jobs and take the civil service exam and help to fill these jobs, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of our citizens. There are great opportunities in our city right now. Thank you all for that commercial.
Thank you. All right. So it's been moved and seconded.
Come on down. Come on down.
7 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Thank you.
We're now on top of page 50. We have motion M22 455 by Councilmember Morel, Direct the City Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to consider amendments to Article 20, Section 20.3.LLL of Ordinance 4,264 MCS amended by Ordinance 26,413 MCS as amended, the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the City of New Orleans to require conspicuous signage with approved permit details to specifically provide desired text amendments as follows. Article 20, use standards, 20.3.LLL, short-term rentals, 20.3.LLL1, short-term rentals, general standards. B, all short-term rentals shall require a permit. The permit should be permanently displayed on the front facade of the property in a location clearly visible from the street during all period of occupancy and contain the permit number. Excuse me, the contact information for the owner or operator, the permit type, partial unit residential, small unit residential, large residential or commercial, and the bedroom and occupancy limit. There shall be an additional requirement that small residential, large residential, and commercial short-term rental units consciously place a sign no smaller than 2 feet by 2 feet reflecting permit number, the contact information for the owner or operator, the permit type, and the bedroom and occupancy limit.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I think this goes directly to what you were previously saying. This is an addition to the other work we're doing to restructure short-term rentals. In the short term, I've been inundated with requests for clear indications when properties are actually short-term rentals. In other cities across the country, they do require you to post information so that you can contact someone if there is a problem, as well as establish when a residential short-term rental is properly permitted versus non-properly permitted. And this creates the mechanism for City Planning Commission to establish what the standards are for such signage. That's what it does. The main issue in here is that it removes the requirement for an NPP meeting before having their actual meetings to expedite this as quickly as possible. Well, why don't you ask the question and fill the card out afterwards, just so that's on the record. We keep the card because you're going to have to fill it out afterwards. So I think Mr. Burnside must have been psychic and saw this coming down the line, but yes.
So just to be clear, I understand what you're saying. You want the placards. I mean, that's always kind of been part of it since 2016. Enforcement was always an issue. But am I hearing this correctly? So when you're talking about small residential, medium, and large, these are for people who actually still have permits?
Well, this ordinance was drafted well before the Fifth Circuit decision. And so it's establishing a process that was meant to be in place before the Fifth Circuit made its decision. So it will be part of the process going forward. For those, this is the beginning of City Planning Commission considering it.
Okay.
It is more than likely, I would guess, from city planning's perspective, this will be delayed until we probably do the next permitting process. But that'll be a conversation between city planning, the city attorney's office, and the council going forward. But the goal is that, as you know, because you have been in the neighborhoods for a long time, there have been quite a few people that operate illegal short-term rentals. And there's always a question because the only current criteria, I believe, is a very small certificate that is occasionally posted in windows to show that it's a short-term rental. And especially for the larger problematic ones, unless individuals have the time and wherewithal to track down who the owner is or to go through the various processes to figure out who to contact, if you have a problematic short-term rental, it is very difficult to identify who's responsible for it. The goal of this is to have clear signage so that you can be able to contact someone. You can know there's a short-term rental, it's properly permitted, and who the point of contact is in case there's a problem.
Okay. Yeah, the previous, like I said, there's been that requirement for a while, but I would ask that it be done across the board. So when you have these downtown apartment buildings that are 80% short-term rental, You don't know which.
It applies to
yeah.
commercials as well.
Good. So I don't know whether it's like each unit is going to have their own placard or one giant placard in the lobby or, but that has to be considered.
It
Yeah.
includes commercials and it gives CPC the discretion to figure out how it's going to be implemented.
Okay.
So
Now the NPP thing, I'm a big champion of NPP. So when I hear NPP being removed, tell me again why that's being
the
removed.
purpose when we originally filed this bill is to try and get the signage situation moving as quickly as possible. It will still have to come back to the full council for evaluation, but considering it's a citywide issue that has a variety of different layers to it from residential to commercial, the process was to expedite it based upon what we're dealing with previously. So it's certainly something where we will make sure it's advertised and that people are aware when we're taking it up sometime in the future, because city planning still has to have their own process to consider it. But the goal was to try and get this done as quickly as possible.
Okay, so by removing the MPP from the permit holder?
No, this is before they could consider the process of doing it. Not, there is no NPP required for any type of short-term rental designation anyway. This is just for this process of developing the signage.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. now.
Right.
Okay, now I understand. Okay, great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have no car, Mr. Burnside, but do you want to come up? Okay. Okay. I always want to give you the opportunity. I will move.
Councilmember Morrell, just a
Yes.
quick question. Your intention in this legislation is that it be conspicuously placed?
Yes.
Okay, just a typo in here, just for the record, so that anybody who would look at it would not be able to say, oh, it didn't say conspicuously. That's all.
Well, right. And I think this also just is directing city planning to come up with the
No,
process. of-
No, it just says consciously placed.
Right. Okay.
As opposed to conspicuously. That's all. Do we have to correct
Well,
that?
actually, if you look at the top part, it says required
No,
conspicuous. Yeah, it's up there.
here.
If you look higher up in the first paragraph, it
No, no,
says to require conspicuous signage with approval.
Oh, I see it. In the second paragraph, it just repeats as consciously. And I know. that's all.
Mr. Swenzig.
No, that's probably just
We'll
something
give
on the
y'all-
record.
We'll give y'all.
Council members, we will do a
Green is
technical
conspicuously
correction to
conscious
correct
right
it.
now.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to be in the record. I don't want somebody to say, "Oh."
Appreciate that it will be consciously conspicuous, that it'll be corrected. Thank you.
We will do a technical.
All right, I move adoption. Vote your machines. 7 yeas, no nays, the motion is adopted.
We're now on top of page 51, Resolution R 22-456 by Councilmember Green by request, submitting the certified following information to the LADOTD for the period October 1st, 2021 through November 15th, 2022. That the parish has performed all interim inspection on all parish-owned or maintained bridges in accordance with the National Bridge Inspection Standards. That all bridges owned or maintained by parish have been structurally analyzed and rated by the parish to determine compliance with the safe load capacity requirements in accordance with the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, AASHTO manual for maintenance inspection of bridges. That the parish has critically reviewed load posting information for all bridges where it has been determined by the LADOTD that the maximum legal load under Louisiana state law exceeds the load permitted under the AASHTO operating ratings. That the parish has updated load posting information to reflect all structural changes, any obsolete ratings or any missing structural ratings. That all parish-owned or maintained bridges which require load posting or closing are loaded or load posted or closed in accordance with the table in the LADOTD engineer directives and standards manual directive number 1.1.1.8. And further, that all LADOTD supplied load posted information concerning a bridge that has been critically reviewed by the parish engineer prior to load posting. When the current list of off-system bridge information is presented to the parish by the LADOTD and has been reviewed and corrected as necessary, it will be transmitted to the LADOTD within 30 days for bridge closures. load postings and quarterly reports, and on or before the required date set by the LADOTT biannual computer report.
Members of the council, this can take just 1 minute. It's more of a technical matter. I have confirmed that the Department of Public Works is in compliance with requirements of the LADOTD with regards to inspections and postings of signs on bridges. I have no reason to believe that they have not done exactly as is required by the state. And if there are no public comments or online comments, I'll move for approval of this resolution. It's been seconded by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines, members. Seven yeas, no nays. I appreciate your support.
We're now going to go to top of page 52. We have motion M22-457 by council members Moreno and Morrell. A motion to request that the Chief Administrative Office and the Civil Service Commission evaluate and amend their rules, regulations, and policies with respect to parental leave policies due to pregnancy, childbirth, or the adoption and permanent placement of an adoptive child.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We recently learned that the city of New Orleans has a very limited and really what I would call an antiquated parental leave policy. So what this motion does is it directs the CAO along with the Civil Service Commission to evaluate and amend the rules, regulations, and policies with respect to parental leave policies due to pregnancy, childbirth, or the adoption and permanent placement of an adopted child to bring our city's rules and benefits in line with the Federal Employee Paid Leave Act, which offers 12 work weeks of parental leave. The motion also requests that the CAO and Civil Service address outdated language in their respective policies that fail to account for the true range of parental and gender identifiers, including the recognition that transgender and non-binary individuals may give birth to a child. As always, it is in the public interest to ensure our policies align with our distinction as a welcoming and inclusive city. It is also critical that the city of New Orleans serve as an example to employers in our region that paid parental leave is imperative for a positive quality of life for employees and their families, and also has benefits to businesses as well. These benefits are well established. Providing new parents with paid time off to care for a newborn or a recently adopted child contributes to healthy development, improves maternal health, and enhances families' economic security. Parental leave, at the end of the day, benefits businesses, and I believe that it'll benefit city government as well, improving our retention and productivity and boosting the labor force participation. I will say that also many cities across the country have already adopted, of course, similar policies, and it's long overdue for us to bring the city in line with other municipalities, and I'm eager to bring this forward. So with that, Councilmember Harris, I know you've got a comment.
Yes, first of all, I'd just like to add my name, and I'm sure that other council members would as well. But I'd love to work with you and Councilmember Morrell on asking the CAO to ensure that facilities have adequate lactation rooms so that women or people who have given birth do not have to go to the bathroom to pump or do whatever. So let's look at that in the future.
And I know that Dr. Avegno has looked at that as well. And there are also recent state laws that Representative Hilferty championed that have those requirements as well. So a good point there, Councilmember Harris. I'm assuming everyone wants to be added to this. Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please add all council members to this motion? Any public comment?
Yes, we have 5.
Go ahead.
First one is from Aaron Suarez, who says, we absolutely need an expansion of paid family leave. Please vote yes on this motion. Jacob Benjamin Aceves says, I am writing in support of the motion to expand paid maternity leave in hopes of other cities following suit. New Orleans has always been the trend-setting city for the rest of Louisiana, and I believe that quality of life improvements, New Orleans will set a good precedent. Bob Morrell says, I support these measures for expanding family leave as an expecting parent. I understand the impact this will have. Thank you. Cody Brumfield says, I want to register my support for the increased family leave for city employees. I'm politely indifferent towards infants, but the adults who make them are usually tired and emotional for the first few months. They're not going to be productive in the office anyway, so might as well let them stay home and nurse the baby or change diapers or just get a sense of what kind of vibes the baby's putting out. And finally, Nuri M says, I'm in support of family leave for city workers.
All right, thank you, Anita. Appreciate it. All right, I've moved. Can I get a second? Seconded by
Go ahead,
Councilmember
Howard.
Green.
Sorry.
Who's moving? Where's Leslie? All right, 6 yeas, no nays.
Just pressed.
We're now on motion M 22-458 by Councilmember Morrell, directing the council chief of staff to issue and advertise a request for qualification and/or proposals for one or more attorneys or law firms to provide professional legal services to the council on an as-needed basis for a term of 1 year with up to a 4 one-year term extension in accordance with Council Rule 42.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, this simply establishes a process of us having a list of qualified law firms to represent the council should the need arise. That's what it does. Any questions, any comments? I move adoption. Can I get a second? Seconded by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines. 7 yeas, no nays. It is adopted.
At the bottom of the page, we have motion M 22-459 by Councilmember Morrell, authorizing and directing the council president to execute a professional services agreement with the Spears Group for a term of 1 year, effective on the date of the expiration of its most recent 6-month extension, with up to 4 allowable 1-year renewals and containing such other provisions as may be necessary or desirable to accomplish the purposes for this motion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, this deals with the fact our outreach and media group, the Spears Group, enables an extension, though we are certainly investigating the possibility of a public information officer. This allows us to have the Spears Group continue in their current role until such time as we move forward with a public information officer or a desire to pursue a different entity. I move adoption. Mr. Green seconds, please vote your machines. 6 yeas, no nays. The motion is adopted.
Yes, unless you want to speak loud, ma'am. We're now at the bottom of page 53.
Never mind.
We have resolution 22-468 by council members Thomas, Harris, Moreno, Morrell, Jeruso, King, and Green. A resolution honoring the life of John L. McKnight Jr. and expressing sincere condolences to his family upon knowledge of his passing on September the 15th, 2022.
This is a resolution that will be formally sent to his family as soon as the council research staff puts it together. So move adoption. Seconded by Councilmember Harris. Vote your machines. 7 yeas, no nays, and the resolution is adopted.
Council members, it is now time to suspend the rules to go to ordinances on first reading.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll make a motion to suspend.
Yay.
Second,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Morrell.
Yeah.
I know, no one ever beats you.
Ordinance on first readings.
This is the second most exciting time.
Members, please vote your machines. Thanks.
Okay. Ordinance on first readings, calendar number 33-938 by Councilmember Moreno. An ordinance to mandate that reserve police officers injured in the line of duty receive city-funded workers' compensation coverage and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-939 by Councilmember King. An ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit a cultural facility with live entertainment, secondary use in an HMMU historic Maroney Bywater mixed-use district located on square 139 lot 8A2 in an undesignated lot B and 1 in the first municipal district bounded by Piety Street, Royal Street, Charter Street, and Desire Street, municipal address 3300 Royal Street and 633 Piety Street, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Zoning docket 5022. Ordinance calendar 33-940 by Councilmember Green, an ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit the retail sale of packaged alcohol beverages in the C2 auto-oriented commercial district, lot on square LHC Lot A in the third municipal district bounded by Elysian Fields Avenue, Interstate 10, and Florida Avenue, municipal address 2401 through 2411 Elysian Fields Avenue, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Zoning docket 6122. Ordinance calendar 33-941 by Councilmember Jeruso, an ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit an established multifamily dwelling in an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district on square 753, lots 14 and 15 in the first municipal district bounded by South Scott Street, South Pierce Street, and Palmyra Street. Municipal address 3915 through 3917 Bank Street, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Zoning docket 6222. Ordinance calendar 33-942 by Councilmember Harris, an ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit a standard restaurant in the HUB1 Historic Urban Neighborhood Business District, CPC, Character Preservation Corridor Design Overlay District, and the Magazine Street Use Restriction Overlay District, and a small multifamily affordable short-term rental interim zoning district on squares 145, lot 8, or 22 in the first municipal district bounded by Magazine Street, Louisiana Avenue, Cam Street, and Talazano Street. Municipal address 1526 Magazine Street, PD2, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Zoning docket 6522. Ordinance calendar 33-943 by Councilmember Thomas, an ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit the retail of sale packaged alcoholic beverages in a BIP Business Industrial Park District in the ENORC Eastern New Orleans Renaissance Corridor Use Restriction Overlay District on lots B and C on an undesignated square in the third municipal district bounded by Chef Mentor Highway, Old Gentilly Road, in the Reed Boulevard, municipal address 9000 Chef Mentor Highway, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Zoning docket 6722. Ordinance calendar 33-944 by Councilmember Harris, an ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit a development containing commercial units between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet in the floor area in an HUMU Historic Urban Neighborhood Mixed Use District in the CPC Character Preservation Corridor Design Overlay District in square 154, lot 1A in the first municipal district bounded by Magazine Street, Melfomine Street, Cam Street, and Thalia Street. Municipal address 1323 through 1329 Magazine Street and 1119 Melfomine Street, PD2, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Zoning docket 6822. Ordinance calendar 33-945 by Councilmember Moreno, an ordinance to amend and reordain chapter 14, section 14-1, 14-306, 14-307, and chapter 30, section 30-7, and ordain chapter 14, section 14-308 through 14-314 to create live entertainment permitting regulations and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-946 by Councilmember Thomas by request, an ordinance to amend and reordain ordinance calendar number 3240 MCS 26139 and amend the motor-owned program for the sale of tax adjudicated properties to adjoining property owners who have maintained such property for at least 1 year to provide policies and procedures for said program and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-947 by Councilmember Morel, an ordinance to ordain section 70 10 of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to approval and execution of the City of New Orleans contracts valued at more than $1 million or having a term of more than 1 year by the City Council and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-948 by Councilmember Harris by request, an ordinance to authorize the mayor of the City of New Orleans to enter into amendment number 1 to a previously executed cooperative development agreement between the City of New Orleans and the Odyssey House, Louisiana, Inc. for the valuable public purpose of referrals by the city's health care for the homeless program for rehabilitative service and transitional housing to modify the provisions thereof and extended the term thereof for 4 years is more fully set forth in the amendment number 1 form attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-949 by Councilmember Morrell, an ordinance to amend section 26-616 and 26-617 of the City of New Orleans of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to the standard for short-term rentals to remove the residential short-term rental permit type and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-950 by Councilmember Morrell, an ordinance to ordain section 2-1122 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to provide for subpoena and investigatory responsibilities of the City of the Orleans Independent Police Monitoring and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-951 by Councilmember Morrell, an ordinance to rescind all short-term rental, partial unit residential owner permits, short-term rental, small residential owner permits, and short-term rental, large residential owner permits issued by City Code 26-613 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. This completes ordinance on first reading.
All right, thank you so much. Councilmember Green makes the motion to adjourn. If I can get a second, seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. All in favor? Aye. I've got 1, 2. JP, okay, I've got five yeas, no nays, and we're adjourned.